But if pirates are shady entrepreneurs, Muhammad was a businessman par excellence.
Ishaq. Allah divided the booty stolen from the first caravan after he made spoils permissible. He gave 4/5 to those he had allowed to take it, and 1/5 to his apostle.
Not one to miss another opportunity.
Ishaq. Muhammad summoned the Muslims and said, "This is the Quraysh caravan containing their property. Go out and attack it. Perhaps Allah will give it to us as prey."
These lines forever damn Islam's pretense of religiosity. They bear repeating.
This is the Quraysh caravan containing their property. Go out and attack it. Perhaps Allah will give it to us as prey.
The motivation was piracy, not religion. The historian reports,
Tabari. Abu Sufyan and the horsemen of the Quraysh were returning from Syria following the coastal road. When Allah's apostle heard about them, he called his companions together and told them of the wealth they had with them and the fewness of their numbers. The Muslims set out with no other object than Sufyan and the men with him. They did not think that this raid would be anything other than easy booty.
These armed raiders wanted to steal assets and kidnap folks. Since the Prophet's sole motivation was piracy, not piety, Islam cannot be a religion. And if it is, we need to canonize Blackbeard and call him a prophet. The fact that the first adherents of this perverse doctrine record this stunning admission of guilt reminds me of the Nazis and the way they chronicled their atrocities in World War II. Immoral, hateful, and violent doctrines like Islam and Nazism corrode men's minds and consciences to the point they become unable to differentiate right from wrong. Ridding the world of those they view as inferior, stealing their possessions, becomes part of their mission, and thus becomes good, deeds worthy of heroic lore and scripture. As further proof that the Badr raid was an act of terrorism, another hadith reports.
Bukhari. Allah did not admonish anyone who had not participated in the Ghazwa
raid
of Badr, for in fact Allah's apostle had only gone out in search of the Quraysh caravan so that he could rob it. But Allah arranged for the Muslims and their enemy to meet by surprise. I was at the Aqaba pledge with Allah's apostle when we gave our lives in submission. But the Badr battle is more popular amongst the people. I was never stronger or wealthier than I was when I followed the Prophet on a Ghazwa.
That pretty much sums up Islam. Upon hearing that Muhammad was on the prowl, the Quraysh sent a delegation out to protect their people and business assets. This explains why the Quran says that Muslims were contemplating a choice between easy booty and fighting for doctrinal supremacy.
They did not suppose that there would be a great battle. Concerning this, Allah revealed a Quran, and you longed that other than the armed one might be yours.
This became Quran 8:7. Before I comment, I'd like you to have the benefit of the entire verse.
Quran 8, verse 7. Behold, Allah promised you that one of the two parties would be yours. You wished for the unarmed one, but Allah willed to justify His truth according to His words, and to cut off the roots of the unbelievers.
To
cut off the roots
is to kill. That makes Allah a murderer and Muhammad a pirate. One was after booty, the other blood. It was worse than that. They inspired a gang of armed men to attack a defenseless civilian enterprise, one owned by a rival. As such, they were terrorists. And there is no way to discount the source of this condemning scripture, as it's confirmed in all three hadith collections and in the Quran. The traditions report,
Ishaq. The people answered the Prophet's summons, some eagerly, some reluctantly. Tabari. When Abu Sufyan heard that Muhammad's companions were on their way to intercept his caravan, he sent a message to the Quraysh. Muhammad is going to intercept our caravan. so protect your merchandise." When the Quraysh heard this, the people of Mecca hastened to defend their property and protect their men, as they were told Muhammad was lying in wait for them.
The Sirah suggests that they weren't quite so hasty.
Ishaq. Some of the Meccans got up to circumambulate the Kaaba. Sitting around the mosque, they wondered why they had allowed this evil rascal to attack their men.
The pagans were being religious, worshipping Allah in His mosque. The Muslims had abandoned religion, setting out on a terrorist raid in the holy month of Ramadan.
Ishaq. Setting out in Ramadan, Muhammad was preceded by 2 black flags. His companions had 70 camels on which men rode in turns.
It's interesting. The white battle flags of the Maghazi raids inspired by Muhammad turned black when the Prophet personally led the parade.
Tabari. I have been informed by authorities that Muhammad set out on 3 Ramadan at the head of 310 of his companions. The emigrants on the day of Badr were 77 men, and the Ansar were 236. The war banner of the messenger was carried by Ali. The banner of the Ansar was carried by Sa'd.
Back in Kaabaville,
Tabari. A body of Meccan men was drawn from the clans. Neither the Prophet nor his companions heard about this force until they reached Badr, which was on the coastal route the Quraysh caravan had taken from Syria.
These passages confirm that Muhammad was on the prowl. They reveal that the caravan was comprised of a poorly protected assemblage of businessmen. They suggest that when Sufyan sent for help, it came in the form of townsfolk. There was no standing army. Mecca was a tiny village of some 5,000 traders eking out a humble living. They didn't have a police force, much less a military. Before Muhammad and Islam, they hadn't needed one.
Ishaq and Tabari. The Prophet marched forward and spent the night near Badr with his companions. They did not know that the Quraysh had come out against them. When the Prophet was standing in prayer,
asking Allah to help him steal,
some Quraysh water carriers came to the well. Among these was a black slave. Muhammad's men seized him and brought him to the messenger's bivouac. They ordered him to salute Allah's apostle. Then they questioned him about Abu Sufyan, having no idea that he was not from the caravan. When the slave began to tell them about the protecting force, it was unwelcome news, for the only object of their raid was Abu Sufyan and
the booty from
his caravan.
Picture the scene. The founder of a religion is out on a terrorist mission designed to raid a civilian business. He is praying, asking his spirit to help him kidnap innocent people and steal their possessions. His fellow militants capture a slave, and they torture him, trying to solicit information.
Tabari. Meanwhile, the Prophet was praying, bowing and prostrating himself, and also seeing and hearing the treatment of the slave. When the slave told them that the Quraysh had come to meet them, they began to beat him and called him a liar. "You are trying to conceal the whereabouts of Abu Sufyan and his caravan." They beat him severely and continued to interrogate him, but they found out that he had no knowledge of what they were looking for.
I have said that Muhammad was the most vile and immoral man ever to have walked the earth. The first Muslims agree, although their hearts and minds have been corroded by Islam, so they don't seem to care. They think that they are just describing another day at the prophetic office. For such immoral and barbaric acts to have been passed on as traditions and linked to the Quran, Muslims must view these terrorist raids and the ensuing crimes favorably. They must see such ungodly behavior as a living witness of Allah's cause, an example as to how to be a good Muslim.
Tabari. When the slave said, "I am from the Quraysh who have come out against you," they beat him. But when he said, "I am with Abu Sufyan," they left him alone. When the Prophet saw what they were doing, he stopped his prayer. He said, "By him in whose hand my soul rests, you beat him when he tells the truth, and leave him alone when he lies."
Muhammad wasn't bothered by Muslims beating the black slave, just by their inept interrogation technique. And he was nervous. Mercenaries can be an unruly lot.
Ishaq. The apostle was afraid the Ansar would not feel obliged to help him fight without the enemy being the aggressor and attacking in Medina.
This is further evidence Muhammad wasn't defending Muslims in Islam. As proof he wasn't a prophet, the Ansar surprised him.
Sa'd said, "We hear and obey. We are experienced in war, trustworthy in combat. Allah will let us show you something that will bring you joy." The apostle was delighted at Sa'd's words, which greatly encouraged him. Muhammad shouted, "It is as if I see the enemy lying prostrate."
The founder of Islam was pleased by the prospect of war, and was encouraged by the thought of his foe bowing in submission. That's fine if you're Stalin, Mao, or Hitler. It's bad if you're Muhammad.